いい機会だ。教えてやる。本物の呪術というものを。領域展開。福間水す。
Has there ever been a time when Fallen isn't meta? I mean, just look at these stats. It really only falls behind the heavy hitter classes of Acolyte, Riftwalker, Lightbender, and recently Boltslinger, classes that are pretty easy and effective. But Fallen's a bit different. It requires good spacing, solid enemy threat knowledge, and more or less good knowledge of your limits. Its core gimmick means that no matter how tanky you get, you'll still pop like a balloon at some point in your spell rotation. Now, Fallen has ways to subvert these weaknesses, and we'll talk about that later, but the point remains that Fallen is by design the glass cannon archetype. It's capable of doing incredible damage, and has the potential of instantly dying to even the smallest hits. Let's talk about Fallen's red nodes. The first red node Fallen gets access to is Bakal's Grasp, more commonly known as Corrupt. Fallen builds a meter through either taking damage or through melees using Massacre. On its own, it provides a rather mediocre raw damage boost, which can be pretty powerful early game, but it falls off rather hard. To supplement this, Fallen is massively supercharged by Enraged Blow and its upgrade Overwhelming Rage, which augments Corrupt to give a multiplicative damage boost depending on Corrupt meter, with just Enraging Blow giving up to 65% more damage at around 40 Corrupt, and Overwhelming Rage giving about 115% at 75 Corrupt. That's right, more than double your damage at the highest. No wonder why this archetype just straight prints damage. We're gonna skip the second red node for now, since Bloodlust is directly tied to Corrupt. Upon exiting Bakal's Grasp, you deal massive damage around you, increased by how much Corrupt you built up. Realistically, that sounds incredible, a finisher that deals incredible damage. But this ability is actually extremely underwhelming once you realize that this thing does less damage than 2 uppercuts, and that mobs are likely dead before you can even pop it. So realistically, this is only giving you damage on raid bosses. And finally, is quite possibly the single strongest red node in the game. I can't think of another archetype that wouldn't want an ability that essentially gives them 500 mana for free. In exchange for what? Having to spend a maximum of 10 EB each raid on spamming pots? Man, I do that already! And at this point you're probably thinking, well, if I spend blood, how do I get it back? Well, upon exiting Corrupted, Intoxicating Blood and its upgrade Exhilarate will heal you for pretty much just playing the game. Fallen gets to cheat building any form of mana sustain and gets to stack damage. And as if that wasn't strong enough, this thing also gives you an additional 15 to 25% multiplicative damage on top of everything. Overwhelming Rage plus Blood Pact equals around 170% more damage. And don't worry, there's much more to come. Now that we're done with the red nodes, let's quickly run through the blue nodes. We already talked about Enraged Blow, which is cool and all, but the next one is Massive Bash. This thing turns Bash from a reasonable frontwards hit to almost Eldritch Call levels of kill aura. Next is Armor Breaker. At 40% Corrupt, your next uppercut gives you a 30% damage boost. That's right, this archetype has not 1, not 2, but 3 separate multiplicatively stacking multipliers to combine into the Exodia of spell multipliers. At least this one is only active for 8 seconds after hitting 40 Corrupt, and doesn't stack with other strength boosts like Lightbender's Fortitude and Acolyte's Vengeful Spirit. Now let's talk about other abilities that are commonly taken on Fallen. Airshot is an ability that turns Warpscream from a pure utility spell into an incredibly strong AoE tool. It adds a flying projectile to Warpscream that can hit enemies multiple times, and somehow turns Warpscream into a spell with roughly the same damage as Uppercut. This again isn't really a Fallen ability, but with how high it is up the tree and how easy it is to get, it might as well be. This thing is so unbelievably strong, it's balanced pretty much only by a Paladin's will to proc Manachism, despite them not really doing anything with that mana. A singular ability, granting 70% damage reduction to a class with effectively 120% base defense. Let's compare that to Arrow Shield, which gives Archer 30% defense. Why does the Glass Cannon archetype get the same defense as Archer normally, plus 20% from wartorn, plus another set of shields? And next, yet another not Fallen ability being absolutely stupid on Fallen. Sacred Surge. Casting your spells and abilities grants a little bit of holy power, and upon reaching at least 25, your next uppercut smites the enemies for almost another uppercut's worth of damage. Now multiply that by 3.5 times. A single uppercut with all these multipliers does almost 7 times the normal damage. You know what? I know what people are here for. Let's talk about raids and builds. Remember how I said Fallen was incredibly versatile? Well, one of the reasons is because it's one of like 2 or maybe 3 total archetypes with functional, spell, and melee versions. The other 2 being Bolt and kind of Ritualist. Spell Fallen typically revolves around dumping your health bar as fast as possible. And Melee typically revolves around staying at low health, using Rage and high multipliers from Corrupt for as long as possible to deal the most damage. However, I'd say both are incredibly viable, and each have their own uses for a variety of reasons. But overall, for a new player, I'd say Tierstack Fallen is better, if you can stomach the simple gameplay. Within Spell, there's 2 primary spell cycles. You have Upperscream, making use of Air Shout and Uppercut, and Bash Upper, making use of Bash and Uppercut. Pretty self-explanatory. The best spell cycle really comes down to build and weapon, since some spells scale better with different elements due to their forced elemental conversions, like Uppercut, which has Earth and Thunder damage. For weapons, Fallen makes great use out of almost every single weapon. Certain weapons are better for each playstyle, but the weapon I'd really leaned into as a new player is Alkatraz. I put some builds I personally tested below, 1 spell, 1 tier stack. However, if you find that Alcatraz is prohibitively expensive, I also have a fantastic build for a weapon that's essentially free, the Forsaken. This build is literally like 32 LE. If you can't do EO, grab some friends and clear it together. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what you want to use. Wynn is a game about damage and, well, Fallen does a damn good job at that. Yeah, it can be broken at times, but it's simple, it's fun, and it's definitely well deserving of its top spot. I know I'll probably keep playing it until some future update blows it to smithereens. Oh yeah, if you've made it this far, check out Wynn Analytics. It's where I get the stats for the video, and it's got interesting data on what people are using nowadays. Link in, description. Anyways, goodbye for now.